I want to share a few thoughts on a question from social media, which was about becoming extra cold when you fast. So, three major driving points: carbohydrate intake, uh, D3 levels or triiodothyronine, which is the active thyroid hormone, and protein intake. Now, the first two go hand in hand, and I'll discuss them together. So, from a couple of studies I read, and also from my personal experiments, carbohydrate intake seems to be directly associated with D3 levels, meaning that reduced carbohydrate intake is associated with lower D3 levels. So when people fast for longer periods of time, or even during intermittent fasting, when people do not consume anything but water or black coffee or unsweetened tea for at least 16 hours every day, it is likely that their 24-hour total carbohydrate intake is lower compared to when they consume multiple meals a day, all spread across their waking hours. Now, the same could go for protein and for fat intake. And in such circumstances, D3 levels are lower. And we know that D3 affects almost all physiological processes, such as metabolism, heart rate, growth, body temperature, and so on. And lower D3 most likely induces a lower body temperature and a reduction in metabolic processes. Now, if you think of it, this is a normal physiological response, evolutionarily speaking. Growth and development cannot happen in scarcity, that is, caloric scarcity, such as in the case of fasting or intermittent fasting. Eating or trying to eat to maintenance calories and consume a nutritious diet that's not restrictive during the feeding window is less likely going to adversely affect health. However, the discomfort of feeling cold is actually something to get used to it. It basically means that you're doing it right. Now, from a personal standpoint, I was for a long time restricting carbohydrates and practicing intermittent fasting at the same time every day, and I also took blood samples frequently. My D3 levels were always below the normal range. However, other markers of thyroid health that I tested for were in their normal range. And I was kind of asymptomatic, so there was no pathological condition. I have to point out that in all this, there's a big confounder variable, which is caloric intake. So restricting calories also impacts D3 levels. And most often than not, in studies of carbohydrate restriction, we're also dealing with carbohydrate restriction. So I'd say more literature study has to be done before I'd have a strong point about this. Now, the second or third aspect of becoming cold during fasting or IF is about protein intake. Now, in short, we know protein is thermogenic, meaning that consuming higher amounts of protein can lead to elevated body temperature. Protein intake also has an effect on T3 levels. So when you fast or when you practice intermittent fasting, if you're eating all your food for the day in an 8-hour window, many people use 6 or even 4-hour feeding windows. This means that even if you consume adequate protein during your feeding window, all that would be metabolized after or when you're a few hours into your fast. So it's kind of normal that when no dietary protein is actively metabolized and when no food or anything of caloric significance is in the system, the system's temperature goes down and processes other than digestion take priority. And I'm talking about processes like cellular repair and maintenance, autophagy, and so on. Now, I personally got used to becoming cold in my intermittent fasting and in my prolonged fasting practices. And after a while, I even took it as the new normal. However, some people might not tolerate it, especially if they are in colder climates. Okay, so I guess that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful. So again, three main driving points: carbohydrate intake, D3 levels, and protein intake. That's it. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.